Yeah.
when I started my career 24 years ago, I always say I got hired because I could make something move on a screen. Like that was like pretty mind blowing at the time.
Hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hospin. Joining me today is a brand new rock star. Super excited to have her on here today. She's the Executive Creative Director at Noble West, Kate Holgate. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me, Kirby.
Absolutely. So excited to dive in today, kind of talk creative, talk about marketing, all that sort of thing. So I've seen that you've talked about saying no to burnout and yes to big ideas. I love that. In your experience, what is the earliest warning signs that a creative team is burning out, and maybe what actually helps reverse it?
Sure. Well, what's interesting is working in an agency, you can only imagine how many balls we're juggling all at once. And I think agencies have a terrible reputation around burnout. And so what we do, we've built a real safe culture in terms of making sure you can raise your hand early and frequently if you feel like you're going to either not be hitting a deadline or you're a little bit overloaded. And we've put some pretty great processes in place where we work very closely with our project management team. So you think left brain, right brain of the agency.
Yeah.
Creatives are notorious for procrastinating. I think a lot of creatives perform very well under pressure. And so we have really trained our team, especially the creative directors, to have a lot of emotional IQ when it comes to understanding signs of burnout, making sure they're staying way ahead of the game and looking out 2-3 weeks rather than what's due tomorrow. I think that typically helps a lot with burnout. I think also just making sure you're modeling behavior that encourages mental health breaks, making sure you yourself, even as a leader, are talking pretty openly about this. I know I really intentionally try not to email late at night. There's a reason we have a scheduler, and because I think a lot of burnout can also be a feeling rather than the sheer amount of workload. And so we're really careful about how we model it with our employees as well.
Yeah, I'll be honest. That's something I've struggled with in the past because, I think the thing I do a good job of is saying, hey, just because I'm working doesn't mean you have to work, and I don't take it home and all that stuff. But for a long time, I didn't. I just, hey, I'm up working. I'll send the email because that's when I'm thinking about it. Yeah. But I've gotten in the habit of scheduling them out a little bit better because, and I think it's because as we hopped on, my daughter was on here. She checks her email, and then So I get a little bit more authentic feedback from her than I probably do for the rest of my team. And so I've started trying to model that behavior a little bit better. But it's something I think when you're the leader of an organization, sometimes you're working.
The second one comes after 7:00. Well, the other thing I'd say is just openly say, hey, I don't expect you to respond to this right now. Just know that this is on my mind. And I just was cranking it out because I had a little bit of time tonight, but you're not expected to answer it till tomorrow. I think also when we just came out of a really big year of growth. And so we have, like this past quarter, we were pretty underwater. And so I've seen it firsthand with our team. We're making sure that, when people are working really, really hard, I think there's a lot of small things that go a long way, like publicly shouting them out for their hard work, making sure you're letting them have some flex time, be like, hey, take a half day off tomorrow. You've been working really hard. Yeah. So I think just, again, making sure that you're not only modeling, but also really being really supportive of some of that work-life harmony, because I don't believe balance exists, especially in the agency world. But I think making sure people have the space and time to enjoy life makes them better creatives at the end of the day. And so, I think it's really important.
I think that's great advice. I love that. So I've also seen that you said optimism is imperative for innovation. I absolutely love this. So I think sometimes leaders see optimism as soft. So how do you define optimism in a way that actually fuels better work and better results?
Well, I think this is a pretty tough industry to be in if you're not optimistic, because if you're creating super bold ideas, at the end of the day, they're probably making someone feel uncomfortable on the other end. And so you get told no a lot, especially when you're pitching big ideas. So what I tell our team is that there's always more ideas. There are going to be a lot of times where we do hit the home run. There's also a lot of times where you might get some tough feedback. And I think our job is to keep rallying the team and keeping that optimism going, because it's pretty tough when you get so close to what I call our little darlings. And when a darling dies on the table, you've spent a lot of time and effort thinking about that darling. And so it
Yeah.
hurts a lot more. And so I always say there's more ideas at the end of the day. And I think that's where optimism is crucial. I also think there's actually a Harvard study that talks about how the most resilient teams are the most innovative because they've failed forward so many times. So failure is going to come with innovation. And so you absolutely have to have a positive attitude when it doesn't work and just learn from it.
Yeah, no. And it's funny. I've heard that, sometimes life's hard. And if we think life's not hard, it makes it harder. And I think sometimes that's the way with creative too, right? Like, it's like understanding that there's going to be failure is not martyr. It is just like understanding that's part of the process. And then you don't feel like your shit is broken. You know what I mean?
And we'll do a lot of postmortems on both wins and failures, because I do think if you're not learning from them, then you're not moving forward. And as you know, this industry evolves so quickly. Like, who knew we were going to be where we are today 5 years ago? And when I started my career 24 years ago, I always say I got hired because I could make something move on a screen. Like, that was like pretty mind blowing at the time. And you think about how far we've come. It's just, you have to be able to embrace a lot of, wins within small experiments that are in a safe environment, and make sure you have a culture of safety to make, to allow for that failure. I always say prototype quickly, check in quickly. The faster you can prototype and get feedback, the faster you can come up with more solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of evolution, the big topic's AI, right? Like, so, and you've described AI as a creative co-pilot. So how should creative leaders be thinking about AI today, not as a threat, but as a tool that creates more space for innovation?
Yeah, I think AI is incredible. I think when it comes to finding where to make your day-to-day more efficient, that is where I think you should be using as a creative. I will never build a timeline by hand ever again. I think about the ways I've used it to, shorten a 37-second script to be around 30 seconds in 6 different ways. I mean, the fact that it can save so much time actually helps leave more space in my mind for bigger thinking.
Yeah,
I've even used it for like an idea eliminator. I always say if it's been done, it's, it's all based on data. So if you say, give me, ChatGPT, I want to hear 10 ideas around a ski activation, chances are they've all been done a zillion times, because that's what the data is saying. So I oftentimes will even use it to kind of reverse engineer what it's giving me. I think at the end of the day, because it saves space and time, that's where we have more the opportunity to think bigger. And I also think from a prototyping standpoint, again, it is incredible. Where you used to have to hire, a voice artist to do a scratch track. Now you can prototype something. I still believe in creating the art yourself, but you can prototype something to see if it's going to work very quickly. And that's where I think it can be a great tool, where you can make ideas that much better because you can prototype quicker.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned earlier, you're talking about coming up with big, bold ideas. And I think a lot of organizations say they want bold ideas, but then they default to those safer decisions. So how can leaders genuinely create space for risk taking without chaos?
I think it goes back to making sure that you're building, proper timelines and then proper check-ins, so that, again, you can prototype quickly, check in faster, and make sure there's room to experiment and fail a little bit. Also, I think when you're prototyping very quickly, you can get together with a team, and as a leader, oftentimes you can sort through like, ooh, there's a nugget here. Let's keep going down this direction. Maybe this one's not quite on strategy. Let's put it aside. It's not going anywhere. I always say, again, there's always more ideas. It's not going to go anywhere. Just put it aside. But I think that, companies do expect more and more and more with less time, less resources, less budget. And so as an organization, again, figuring out how to use tools to be efficient, how to make sure you are building the right team. I think making sure that you're looking for, now, what I used to say when you're recruiting creatives, it used to be all about the craft. You'd have your art director that's in their lane. You'd have your copywriter. And now I think there's a new generation of critical thinking, creative problem solvers that have learned how to use tools. So a copywriter can now put together a storyboard sketch, again, from a script they've crafted, and vice versa. An art director can, play around with words a lot more. So I feel like we're looking for people that if you build a safe environment where they can experiment and keep learning, then you're going to have more innovative ideas. And I think, honestly, again, when it comes to recruitment, which wasn't your question, but I feel like it's an important part of the kind of team we're building to make sure that you do have an environment where people encourage each other to try new things. And if you're not learning in this industry, you're not going to last.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's for sure. Okay. Final question for you. Sort of bonus question. My company lives in the branded merch space. So I've been asking a lot of the best marketers I get a chance to talk to, what's the best branded merchandise experience you've ever been a part of, either giving or receiving?
I actually thought about this for a long time, and I had 3 that I remember very distinctly over the last probably 5-10 years. And I think what really makes the best branded merchandise experience is when there's something personalized inside of it. And I'm not just talking about like my name's on the card. I mean, I think about when I've worked with different vendor partners who have come by, dropped a gift off on my doorstep, and there's something inside of that box that might be a branded theme, but there's something very personal to an experience they had with me. That would be a situation that I find always really memorable. Again, I feel like people still want to connect with human beings. That's why this is such a relationship-driven business. Whether you have, relationships with your vendors, with your team, with your clients, that's the one thing AI won't take away, is having that shared human connection and the collaboration. And so whenever I get a gift that has a very personal touch to it, it's always memorable. So
I love that. It's great advice. Okay. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time, Kate. Where can people find more information about you?
You bet. Well, first of all, as you mentioned, I'm the executive creative director at Noble West. This is an agency. It's that specializes in the future of food and agriculture. So you can visit our website at wearenoblewest.com, or you can always find me on LinkedIn, and always happy to make new friends in the industry. So
I love it. Hey, this has been great. I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again sometime. Okay.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time.